Every serious engineer has a number they're chasing, not a tempo or a key, but a number in decibels. It's the sound floor. The quieter your room, the more truth you can pull out of a performance. Studios spend $50,000, $100,000 trying to get that number as low as they can. Floating floors, decoupled walls, rooms inside of rooms. My family got there a long time ago, but instead of calling it acoustics, they called it survival. Today I'm talking about one of the things that doesn't get taught in a music class or program. It's something that every live sound engineer has felt. It's the way sound moves in a real-life situation outside of the studio. Sound doesn't go around a mountain the same way it travels around a rock. It diffracts. It bends, but it doesn't bend equally for every frequency. High frequencies, anything sharp, voices at a distance, the snap of a twig, the bark of a dog a half a mile away. These have short wavelengths, and a solid ridgeline will stop them cold. Low frequencies are another problem entirely. A bass note, thunder, a wagon wheel on a dirt road. Long wavelengths. They roll over terrain like it's not even there. What this creates on the far side of that ridge is what physicists call an acoustic shadow zone. Sound pressure measured in decibels can drop 20 to 30 decibels in a matter of yards. That's not a small difference. It's the difference between being found and not found. The Appalachian moonshiners of the Prohibition era understood this principle with a precision that had nothing to do with math and everything to do with consequence. I want to take a second here before I get into this. The sound on my last two videos here, maybe three, wasn't good enough. And I know that because you told me, and because I know who you are now. You see, I didn't expect this audience. I didn't expect anybody. I didn't think anyone was going to pay that much attention to my channel. I was just shooting in the dark, trying to hit a weekly deadline, doing everything myself, doing it when I was already tired. And I was treating this channel like it was invisible, which it's apparently not. You showed up, and you showed up with good ears. I'm absolutely floored at the type of people who are watching me right now. And I really appreciate you. I respect that you're here, and I'm going to put more effort into this for you. I'll fix it, which I hope I have this time. I'm sure you'll tell me if I have not. I'm still learning. So let's keep it going. Oh, and by the way, the guy who told me that my mic sounded like it was turned around backwards, you were right. You, whoever you are, have an excellent ear. That's impressive. You knew what was wrong. My family's been in these mountains for generations, and somewhere in that lineage was a man named Old Lum. Well, we called him Old Lum. His name was Columbus McGee, and he was a moonshiner. Lum was not a romantic figure. He was a practical one. He ran his moonshine still during Prohibition, which means he was engaged in a daily calculation most people will never have to make. How do you produce something loud, hot, and fragrant in a landscape where federal agents are actively listening for exactly those signatures? He didn't get caught, and it was not luck. Running water produces a noise which sound engineers call broadband noise. It has no pitch center. It covers the frequency spectrum from the low rumble of turbulence to the high hiss of surface tension when it breaks. It's not really white noise in a clinical sense, but it's a noise floor. If you place a sound source near moving water, that creak becomes a masking agent. Any stray acoustic information, the clink of metal, a voice, the hiss of steam, it all gets absorbed into the noise of the water. To a listener at a distance, there's nothing you can isolate. You can't locate it. That high-frequency shadow zone that I described, Columbus didn't need any math formula. He needed to know that if he stayed on the creek side of that ridge, the sound of his operation stayed with him. His still wasn't hidden in spite of the landscape. The landscape became his still. This was a canning cave, a vegetable storage room, a root cellar carved into the bank. Back when you didn't have the luxury of knowing how you were going to keep your food good for the winter. Now, limestone does something really cool. Nothing that's ever been taught to my ancestors, but something sound engineers pay a great deal to replicate. Limestone, which is calcium carbonate, is a sedimentary rock. It's the compressed remains of ancient marine organisms from the creek. And because of how it's formed, it's porous at a structural level. That porousness gives it a high absorption coefficient. Speaking acoustically, that means when sound waves enter this space, instead of reflecting back, this stone converts that energy into heat, actually. It eats the sound. This is the principle behind the acoustic foam in every recording booth you've ever been in. The principle behind anechoic chambers at university physics departments. You're sitting inside a structure that, if you priced it out as studio treatment, would run you a lot of money to replicate artificially. My ancestors dug it by hand to store some turnips. Sound design is funny that way. Now, if you want this information to become directly useful for anyone working in music, silence is not the absence of sound. That's a beginner's mistake, and it's understandable. But the second you put a microphone in an empty room, you learn real quick that there's no such thing as empty space. There's a space whose contents you haven't identified yet. HVAC systems, refrigerators, the 60-cycle hum of your power grid, traffic at a frequency so low you don't even register it's there. These actually aren't always inconveniences. They're the noise floor of your environment, and every recording that you make lives on top of that floor. Engineers who understand this, really understand this, will treat that silence the same way a painter will treat negative space, not as nothing, but as something that things need to be designed around. Dynamic range is the distance between your loudest moment and your noise floor. The wider that distance, the more emotional resolution your sound has. A whisper can actually whisper, in other words. A silence can breathe. Every technique that old Lum used, position in his operation by the creek, using the ridge shadow, working inside the limestone, was, without his even knowing it, a lesson in dynamic range. He was maximizing the distance between his signal and the noise floor. He just called it not going to prison. There's a neurological reason that silence hits you differently than any note that you hear. The brain doesn't go quiet when sound stops. It sharpens up. The auditory cortex keeps processing in the absence of input. It's filling in things, anticipating things. It's your imagination at work. That's why a rest in a Beethoven sonata can sometimes carry more tension than anything on either side of it. This is also the reason why the loudest moment in a really well-mixed record is almost never anything like the loudest moment in a poorly mixed record. It's not about the amplitude, it's about the contrast. You can't hear a whisper as well after you've been shouting. You can hear it perfectly after silence. 480 million years of limestone, a hand-dug root cellar, a creek that's been running over the same stones since before anybody in my family ever got to these mountains. Old Lum wasn't building a recording studio, but he found one. And the reason his still stayed quiet, the reason a great recording breathes, is the same reason. Silence is architecture. You have to build it on purpose or find a place where the physics are already built in for you. That's kind of the dark side about having a lot of wild land. You have to kind of police it. If you work in music, the practical takeaway here is real easy. Study your room before you study your gear. The most expensive microphone in the world is going to tell you the truth about your space, but that truth might not be so flattering. And if you're somebody who just loves the quiet, find your ridge, find your creek. Find that one place where the frequency of everything drops well below the noise of your own thinking. My family found this one about 100 years before I was born. I'm still grateful.